Today's episode, we are going to talk about culture in terms of you don't have one.
That makes it easy. End of podcast.
Let's first start talking about just to get everybody on the same page, what is a culture?
It is one or two values that pass two barriers. One, there's consensus, which means a critical mass of your employees believe this is actually the value that best represents the company. Two, there's conviction, which means not only can they identify the value, but they believe it accurately depicts the company.
Yeah, I would say that it's how people feel like things should be done.
Yeah, and there's only a finite array of these. Innovation is a cultural value. Teamwork is a cultural value. But there's not 100 values. There's maybe 12, 13, 14. But what you and I see, and you're doing a lot of measurement inside companies, is we see companies that don't have any consensus around a single value or two. They actually have a number of different parts of the organization believing in different values. For example, a hospital and the maintenance department believes safety is the top value, not of their department, of the whole hospital.
But it is for their department. Like safety may not actually be a value for the other departments.
Yeah, but then you ask accounting and theirs is ethics. And then
they'll think that's for the whole organization.
They'll think it's for the whole organization.
While the maintenance people are not thinking about ethics.
Meanwhile, teamwork is what the nurses think. And meanwhile, high performance is what the executive team thinks. And every group believes that about the whole organization. But when you poll the organization, there's no coherent or unifying culture. And so that is what we see most of all, is we see, and it's not quite as bad as it sounds. There will be something to build from. And so you'll be able to take all these different pieces that we're seeing in an organization. And I mean, I've sat through you doing this a bunch of times, and you're able to tell the executives, look, the theme, even though it's not consensus, even though not all departments believe it, and there's not conviction everywhere, is teamwork or whatever, innovation. And it's close. And with a little work, you could firm that up to actually be more clearly your culture. And then we have to sometimes explain why they want a culture.
I always think of it like dancing. If you are dancing with somebody and you both know the steps, then it's a lot easier to dance and you're probably not going to have some damage on your toes at the end of it. And culture is this way that everybody has a sense for how other people in the organization are going to move or how they're going to make decisions. And so you're able to actually dance together. And the outcome of that is that you have better coordination, because that's what that is. And then more efficiency, because you're not all running in different directions or stepping on each other when you're doing things or working in odds with each other because you think you should behave this way and they think they're behaving some other way that's counterproductive. And so because of those two elements, and because like when you know the steps, you don't have to talk.
Yeah.
And so you're actually able to get more things done because you're not running around having to tell people what the steps are. And so for all those reasons, you wind up having higher performance because you have a strong culture.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was thinking about, you remember the police chief near Austin, just in a city outside of Austin. And I-35 ran through his district, and one night, middle of the night, one of his relatively new officers pulls somebody over and then realizes this is actually a drug courier and ends up seizing, it's some huge number, like $110,000, like cash was in the back of the car. And so the guy counts it, and then he calls for backup to have it counted. And then he asks for a third independent count when the money actually hits the evidence locker. And so the chief in the morning found out about the story. And before the guy went off shift, he's like, hey, why did you count this 3 times? And the patrol officer said, well, you're always saying to do the right thing. And I felt like that was the right thing. And when he tells the story, he says, then I threw my arm around him and I gave him a big old hug. And I said, that's exactly what I wanted you to do. And that's the value of ethics. That's what ethics is, a cultural value. And the way that it serves you is that in that sense, literally, but also metaphorically, it answers questions that pop up on the side of the highway at 2 a.m. when
So you
nothing
don't have
else
to
is
call.
around. Yeah.
Right.
It answers the question for people, for employees, what should I do?
And even if they don't get it exactly right,
Yeah.
they're probably not going to be devastatingly off. And if you like, we've been in other places where, ethics was the key value, and they'd be like, so why'd you do that? And then the person would explain it, and then they'd understand how they got there, and they'd be like, all right.
Yeah. So the point of this podcast is most companies don't have a single unified culture, meaning there's not, if you took a random selection of your employees, which, we do all the time. Now, ours isn't usually random. It's usually everybody we can get. But if you take a random selection of your employees, they're not going to be able to return to you the same value as being the highest priority value in the organization. And it's not going to have conviction, meaning a strong feeling everywhere. And it doesn't even have to be everywhere. It just needs to be in a critical mass across the organization. You're going to end up getting a lot of values popping up, and then you're going to have to do a little work.
Yeah. So what happens, I think it's worth having this conversation. So what happens when you don't have a strong culture, which means you don't have consensus and conviction across all departments, is that basically then you randomly will get a department leader
Sure.
who is actually pretty good. And
Yep.
so they start doing the things like reward and punishment and communication and setting up things within their department, within their power, that basically reinforces the values that they think are right.
Yep.
And how they derive
That's
that
right.
is probably from past experience.
Yep.
So this is how we do things. And so, and then because everybody has different experiences and has a different value hierarchy, then you get randomly another manager in another department. And then all of a sudden you have 2 departments that are actually working in opposition to each other. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but it can be the case. And now you've got like basically warring departments. And it happens because you had a weak culture in the first place, or you had a culture where you didn't have any sort of conviction behind the beliefs.
Right.
And so then you get lucky in a sense that you get these individuals who come in and usually
Pockets.
These are the departments that are actually running really well.
Yeah.
And they become these little fiefdoms.
Yep.
And
they have little baby culturettes.
Yeah.
But if you're the CEO, they may not
be moving in the direction you want them to be moving in.
That's right. I got my one part doing this, my other part.
Right.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, I don't know who said this, but like if you don't tell the story, somebody else will tell the story for you. Well, if you don't set the culture, then somebody else is gonna do it. And it may be a lot of somebody else's, and it may be very different. And then you don't get the beautiful coordination and efficiency that we were talking about with the dance.